Hey y'all, welcome back to Dots and Beyond. My name is Beth. Today we're going to do my reading wrap up for January, finally, and go ahead and reveal our Grimm Fairy Tale read along for February. Let's go ahead and get started. We are going to start here on my January dashboard where I have listed the books that I either came into January reading or read in the month of January. Those that I have checked off are the ones that I have completed. And I'll be perfectly honest, everything that I read in January was on audio, and that had everything to do with the situation that I have with my neck and my C6 and my C7 joints and not being able to look down at a physical book or even like an iPad or an e-reader. So everything's been with my ears. With that being said, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet is still on hold. I've thought about buying it on audio because I really want to finish this book. I really like this book. It's my first Becky Chambers, but hopefully I'm feeling better. We're getting there. I have strict instructions from my physical therapist not to overdo it because I'm feeling better. We'll see if I can't get to the point where I can read a physical book. The good thing is it's also cut down on my screen time from having my phone in my hand playing games or looking down at it and scrolling, doom scrolling, all of that sort of thing. So there's been considerably less of that in the month of January as well. But what did I read? Surprisingly, I fell to peer pressure and I did Red Rising. So Red Rising is a gripping sci-fi novel set on Mars where society is divided into color-coded castes. Our protagonist, Darrow, is a lowly red. He infiltrates the elite golds to dismantle this oppressive system. It's a tale of rebellion, power, and the cost of seeking justice in a dystopian future. Red Rising came out 10 years ago, but there has been a lot of hype for the entirety of this series in the last, 6 to 8 months on BookTube. There's a lot of people jumping on board, a lot of people reading this, a lot of people loving this, and I found it to be okay. I'm perplexed by its popularity, and yet I'm completely on the fence about whether I'm going to pick up the second one or not and see if something changes. One of the things that I wrote on here is that maybe I'm simply over the brutal annihilation of teenagers for the sake of a better society. It's a noble goal for sure, but why do the young always have to be the sacrifice? Piggybacking off of, obviously, The Hunger Games, the most popular of the dystopian youth franchises. I don't know. It's got some pacing that is off. The character Darrow is way too perfect. He can do no wrong. He can adapt to anything. I hate perfect villains, the ones that will never die, no matter what. I also hate perfect heroes. Give this guy some more flaws so that you can make him a little more human and a little more likable. I'm just not entirely sure where I fall with this series. I might DNF the series. I might pick up the second one, see what I think, and go from there. I just don't know. I enjoy a good rising up story, a good overthrowing of the oppressor story. Maybe Red Rising is just not for me. Then I continued with my Legends of the First Empire, binging of all things Michael J. Sullivan. If you've been around here for a minute, I read all of the Rhaenyra books in 2023, the Rhaenyra Chronicles, the Rhaenyra Revelations, and then I moved into Legends of the First Empire. Age of War is the third book in the Legends of the First Empire series. Sullivan weaves the tale of war and alliances between human and elves. Can't tell you a whole lot more than that. The story does explore consequences of choices that are made in the previous books, delving into themes of trust, betrayal, and evolving relationships among those races. But we're in a middle book here in a series. It's in the middle. I did write in this that in a series of so many books, I expect the middle, the third of 6, to be dramatic and climactic, and Age of War delivers. I forgot to fill in my rating. I did rate it 5 stars on Goodreads and Storygraph. If you want to go follow me over there, I have been trying to keep my reviews and rating more up to date than I did in 2023. I wrote every character arc, and there are many of them, drives this installment further forward and deeper into my heart. This is dangerous, for as the title states, war has arrived and not all come out on the other side unscathed. I'm not going to go into more detail on my review, but you're going to see another one of these here in just a minute. I did finish Age of War, and then I took a brief break and read some nonfiction. The Grief Tower by Lauren Wells is a practical guide to processing grief with third culture kids. Third culture kids are military kids, missionary kids who grew up outside of their passport country. This doesn't just count for Americans, like I'm an American who was raised in Kenya. You could be Korean and raised in South Africa. You could be from Dubai and raised in France. Any kid who is being raised in a culture outside of their own. What the research is starting to not suggest, but actually prove, is that third culture kids have a lot more early grief childhood than the average person of their home country, in my case, America. That comes down to the number of friendships you've lost from moving around the world. Sometimes you were raised in a country that had some violence. For me, Kenya was relatively stable. I do have very vivid memories of being 7 years old and there was an attempted military coup on the government and we had curfews and there were helicopters flying around everywhere and we couldn't be outside, those sorts of things. We slowly but surely stack those little moments of grief because they are covered up. We're told we're not allowed to feel them because, oh, look at the wonderful life you're getting to lead in beautiful Kenya, or you're there for the sake of your parents' ministry and that is just such a noble cause. And we're told to not feel those things. It's a very short book. It's 102 pages. I read it over a few days because this is the book that I was reading on the shuttle that I take to and from work. It unpacked a lot for me. As an older third culture kid with a mostly positive upbringing, the Grief Tower helped to remove the rose-colored glasses I've been wearing for 40 years and face some personal baggage that needed unpacking. I gave it 4 stars. Is it a perfect book? No, but it's definitely the beginning of a conversation that needs to be had, and more scientific research needs to take place about this topic. And those of us who have had these immense grief towers built up for years and years and years, and we're trying to face them as adults. The book puts some practical guidance in there for parents who are currently raising their kids in that situation and conversations to have to mitigate them becoming 35, 40, 45-year-old adults who haven't dealt with those things yet. I like that, but it does definitely need some more science, some more research to go along with it. That's what I read in January. As far as nonfiction, I ended the month with Age of Legend, again, Michael J. Sullivan, the 4th book in the series. This one, again, continues the same saga. Our Age of War has ended, and this is picking up from the end of that war. There are some time jumps. There's a 1 year, a 3 year, a 5 year time jump that takes place, and it falls a little bit for me. So I gave it a 3.5 star. The story does move forward. We learn more about our characters. There's a quest. Fantasy lovers, we love a good quest, but it's bulky in a way that I didn't want it to be bulky. Everybody on this quest, or most of the people on this quest, are now coupled up. I don't think we necessarily need all of the coupling up. Not everybody needs to be in a relationship, but it's fine. Spoiler alert, I'm now in the next one. I can see why and where that decision was made by the author. I love a good romantic storyline that's interwoven in. I'm not a huge romance reader, but it needs to feel natural and organic, and not all of them do. Having read most of the one after this at this point, it's a little bit better. This is definitely a middle book. It definitely feels like that connecting book. In a trilogy where sometimes the second book is not that strong, this is how this one feels, and it's book 4 of 6. It's in the middle. It definitely has that middle book vibe for me. I still enjoyed it, just didn't enjoy it quite as much. And that is what I read in January. We're going to set up for February here. Before we do that, let's look back at trackers and things. Here is my 12 stories card. Sleeping Beauty was our story for January. More on that in a minute. We'll come back and fill in February. Here's my index. So Age of War, Age of Legend. I definitely have the A checked off for my alphabet challenge. The Grief Tower and Red Rising, all on my index. I have read 4 books. I decided to fill these in gold. I might clean up the edges around it. I still haven't read a memoir. I still haven't read a classic. And none of the books that I read were off of my backlist. So that's fun. My series tracker, I'm moving this next Friday, and in that process, I decided to do a hardcore inventory of all of my books. And this needs some serious updating. I'm mostly through getting it all organized in Notion because I'm definitely in more series than just what's on this page. Realm of the Elderlings, I've still only read Assassin's Apprentice. At some point this year, I'll start trying to go through the rest of them. I'm not going to make it through all of them in 2024. I just wanted to have a guideline of their order. Book haul, I have purchased The Happiness Trap by, is it Ron Harris? I don't know, I'd have to look. This is the book club pick for the bullet journal community online for this month. And then I bought myself a copy of Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman because it's in my top 5 books. I didn't find it in my book inventory because obviously I've loaned it to someone or just given it to someone and never asked for it back. I do tend to be like a book dealer. I do that a lot. So I repurchased myself a copy. My release radar, I think I've only added 1 book to this list on August 6th, The Mercy of the Gods. Otherwise, this is pretty much the same as it was when we set up the journal. I haven't DNF'd anything yet. And then in here we have my Grimm watch along. I'm behind. I forgot about it, so I've just started my Grimm watch this week. I've made it through episodes 1, 2, and 3. I need to finish season 1 by the end of this month. I should probably be able to do that. It shouldn't be that hard. I've actually been binge watching Stargate SG-1 again. And I say again because I can't tell you how many times I've watched Stargate and Stargate Atlantis. It's a problem. That's where I've been. So I put that on hold and have started catching up on my Grimm watch. And that's why this is laid out like this, is so that you can watch 3 episodes a weekend, or if you need to, you can come back and catch up when you need to catch up. My book of the month picks, I skipped January, and then for February, I ordered The Heartless Hunter, and apparently everybody else did too, because mine just shipped and we're a full week into the month. So I got one of those, your book was very popular emails, and we're going to have to get you one, but it's on its way. So that's my book of the month pick for February. And we are ready to set up for February. My question to you is, did you read Sleeping Beauty? What did you think of Sleeping Beauty and the differences between what we've come to know of Sleeping Beauty and what is portrayed in Grimm? If you remember correctly, the origins of Sleeping Beauty come from many different places. And of course, the Grimm brothers didn't write anything original. They just compiled oral tellings of books. I'm using this old washi tape because I've had it forever. I wanted something with an orange tint to it, and I don't have any orange washi tape, especially not any large orange washi tape. Interesting questions for Sleeping Beauty. How are traditional gender roles depicted in the tale, and how do they influence the characters' actions and relationships? More than that, how do the elements of the story reflect the values, beliefs, and societal norms of the time? Because while we might look at something and read it and go, oh, well, that's not acceptable, and who are we to say it's acceptable or not? Trust me, I read enough classics that I know when things should definitely be reevaluated as we become more enlightened as a society. But yes, tell me your thoughts and your feelings there on as close to the original Sleeping Beauty as we can get. The copy that I linked online for everyone to read. Someone had pointed out that her name was not Briar Rose in that because I had set up this page with the rose washi tape because of it being Little Briar Rose. And that's true. There are very many different editions of the Grimm fairy tales. Some of those editions, in the title, it is titled Sleeping Beauty, and in parentheses, they put Little Briar Rose. And in other editions, that's not there, and she has a completely different name. Again, that's because those stories are taken from so many oral traditions that were passed down for generations and generations, and then changed and adapted based on who was telling the tale and which of the Eastern European countries that tale was being told in, because while the Grimm brothers are German, not all the tales are specifically of German origin. Of course, looking at this old world tape, that's Sudan, that's Russia. Here's Europe, so there's France, and then our tales would have been coming from this area here. The reason that I wanted to do sort of an orange washi tape, which I realized I don't have, is because our tale for February, we're going to alternate between more well-known tales and lesser-known tales. And our tale for February is The Wedding of Mrs. Fox. This is my image that I'm going to paste in here. And I'm going to butcher this because it's in German, but it was also known as Wanderhochschnitt de Frau Frühchen, again, a folktale collected by the Brothers Grimm. And while the specific origins of the wedding of Mrs. Fox before the Grimm brothers collected it are challenging to trace, because this is definitely one of those ones that was oral tradition, they believe it likely circulated orally among German-speaking communities for generations before the Grimms wrote it down. It was first published in Kinder- and Hausmärchen, Children and Household Tales. Not going to give anything away about the wedding of Mrs. Fox other than to tell you that she is a fickle fox. She is a fickle fox indeed. Now we are just going to stick that right in there. I picked this Ohuhu number 40 to go with this washi tape to do the outlining and things here in my journal. It's not a very dark marker, so I'm not sure if it's going to work to write in our story. Let's see. Yeah, it's not very dark. That's all right. The wedding, Mrs. Fox. It'll darken up a little bit as it dries. Go ahead and stick that back in here. Here is my February header. I'm going to embellish this with some other things as well. Every time I have sat down to do this video, I've realized that I didn't have my components ready. I didn't have this printable made at one point, and at another point, I hadn't written down my thoughts on each of the books that I wanted to say on camera, like the little teeny tiny synopsis, not necessarily my review of, but what the book is actually about. And I hadn't made my February header on this TJ paper. I just was completely unprepared with everything I have going on with my physical limitations, my son's upcoming surgery, the fact that we're moving next week. I told my cousin, we went to dinner last night, and I told her that I was hanging on to February by the coattails and just being dragged along, that I didn't feel I was in control of anything. I know that we all feel that way sometimes, and it can be difficult. Just know that this has been one of those particular months for me. The other thing I told her while we were at dinner is that the 10 darkest weeks of the year were really the 10 darkest weeks of the year, because it started off with the whole family having COVID. And then there's been the spine issue. There's been the am I moving? Am I not moving? There's been the hole in my son's retina. It's just been one of those times that's like, can we get a break? And I don't feel like the universe is out to get me or anything. It's just been 10 dark weeks. It's not been great for my mental health. And most of you all, I think, know that I live with bipolar disorder. In the midst of that, I've also not had a therapist. Right before Thanksgiving, my therapist took a leave of absence and then didn't come back to that practice. So I'm also in search of a new therapist. So during the 10 darkest weeks of the year, trying to manage everything with my bipolar disorder and everything else, I've not had a therapist. Let's just say that. It has been a challenge. Hopefully, we're coming out of it on the other end. If I can get through February, maybe I'll be okay. On top of it, February is a very busy month for me in regards to events that I am planning at my organization. Not just events that take place in February, but a lot of events that take place in March. So I'm doing all of the prep work and the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's to make sure that those things go flawlessly. It is a challenge to do all of that when you have all of this going on in your personal life as well, and then you don't have a therapist to talk to. I know not everybody can afford therapy. I definitely know that it is a luxury. I actually get a very big discount where I work with my insurance, so that therapy for me costs about $20 a session. Any other place that I have worked, therapy was a specialist copay because of our beautiful healthcare system here in the US. It was $60 or $80 a session, which if you're going weekly is out of the realm of possibility for many, many humans to be able to afford that cost. I also go bi-weekly. Would I benefit from weekly? Probably. Do I feel like I have to go weekly? No. Partially for the sake of my finances. But yeah, just riding the coattails of February, waiting to see what happens. And that's one of the reasons that this video is so late. And of course, obviously, my ability to sit at a desk today compared to a week ago is monumentally different. I've reached the point where the section that is the problem area in my neck and back feels like a pulled muscle. So in between my spine and my shoulder blade, right into that area, it's sore. It feels like I've pulled the rhomboid muscle, which is what that muscle is between your spine and your shoulder blade. But I haven't. What has happened is that bulging disc has receded back where it's supposed to be in between my spinal column. And it's just sore now because of the damage that it caused and the nerve damage that it caused while it was bulged out. I'm much better. Much, much better. In fact, I can do nothing but sing the praises of my physical therapist because we have avoided surgery for now. Again, one more fun thing. I don't know if y'all noticed my cup. It says, "Oh, for fox's sake." But I wanted to use this for this video. This is actually my son Kenny's cup. I bought it for him for Christmas a few years ago because he also wears little Harry Potter glasses. And the fox is his favorite animal. If you ever went back and watched the flip through of the very first bullet journal that I did for him, the annual pages at the beginning were a fox theme. And we have a couple of these fox mugs around the house. He's got one that is the whole head of a fox. It's more Christmassy though. The foxes are a thing in this house, but I just think this is hysterical. The "Oh, for fox's sake" on the mug. I am probably going to add some decorations here in and around, maybe some other stickers. I'd like to get some more gold onto this page. I'm not going to do that on camera. I'm going to try to go ahead and film a plan with me as well today. I hope you enjoyed this reading wrap up. Tell me specifically if you've read Red Rising. What do you think of it? Are you on the hype train? Some of the booktubers that I watch regularly and really trust their judgment when it comes to fantasy and science fiction are loving this series, and I was like, And again, maybe it's an age thing. Maybe I've just gotten too old. Let me know your thoughts below about Red Rising. Let me know your thoughts about the gender roles and the societal norms and whatnot that took place during the course of reading Sleeping Beauty. What did you think about that? We can have a conversation down below in the comments. If you like this video, you know what to do. Please give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next one.